Colonel Eisin, it's now becoming increasingly clear that Hamas faces two choices. It can surrender the hostages or fight to the finish with, in the tunnels, wherever they are hiding. Which one do you think is more likely? Do you think Hamas wants to live and fight another day, or it would prefer to extinguish itself? Because clearly the way the Israeli military is in strength around Gaza, it doesn't look like Hamas has much of a chance. Do you think this organization wants to live or wants to fight to the finish?
Hamas is a terror hybrid organization. That's a hard term. It has a terror army. It's both part of the population, embedded in the population. There are 2.2, even 2.3 million people who live in the Gaza Strip. That's part of the way that Hamas, the terror hybrid organization, built its defenses. So you asked, are they, or what I understood is you're asking, are they suicidal?
Yes.
Will they go down and rather die than anything else? I don't think so. I think that they built their attack so that we, Israel, would be the ones who would be perceived as being the bad guy,
right,
as opposed to focusing on what a terror organization does when it's built into the society and it builds the subterranean, underground capabilities to protect the terrorists and uses the civilians above ground to be their protection. We look at that and go, something different. Only Hamas. Hezbollah does the exact same thing inside right. Lebanon. And I mention that because I don't think that Hamas is suicidal. And I think that they think that we will stop because the entire world is so breathing down our necks. And I understand that for the amount of civilians that Hamas has put at the forefront as their human shields.
Right. Colonel Eisin, in fact, looking at the brutality that Hamas inflicted on civilians and the hostage taking on the 7th of October, there seemed to be a plan to all this. This had all been very, very, meticulously planned, if there's a word like that. In fact, there was a report in the Washington Post recently which seemed to suggest that there was an even more intense plan of calculated brutality where, where it is about the assault on women, or capturing of hostages. As a seasoned intelligence operative, could you tell us why they did this? This level of calculated brutality, was it to inflict to kind of expect the kind of retaliation that Israel would then, unleash on them, which is what we are seeing today?
It's a fascinating question, and I'm thinking right now as I'm responding, how do I respond? Because I think that all of us understand, the viewers understand, that this is the thing that we were so surprised by, meaning we did not understand this before. This aspect of the atrocities and the brutality are part of what this terror organization planned for a long time and then executed, and they had intended, as you said, to do much more than what they did, meaning they had even further plans to be butchering, torturing, mutilating, killing. The term that I'm using now is scorched land. I want to share with you that just yesterday, 5.5 weeks after that brutal attack, they managed to identify, based on a little piece of bone, the piece of a lovely woman, Vivian Silver, from Kibbutz Be'eri, who's been a peace activist her entire life, that part of that Hamas plan, part of that brutality, was to do it in such a way that we still have hundreds of people that are missing, that we don't know if they're hostages or if they were just burnt to nothing. And that is called terror. It is the ugliest, most horrific aspect that it surprised us. And I want to say it surprised us because we're human beings. The only way that the Hamas terrorists, could enact this is because for so long, I even want to say, decades, but that's so horrible, they have portrayed and viewed Israelis and Jews as being inhuman. Meaning when they did this attack, and if they would have done a bigger attack, and as they were glorifying killing and butchering and mutilating and torturing, they can do so because they have so dehumanized the Israeli, the Jew, and that's how they could do such a thing.
Right. And Col Eisin, again, do you think that the way these attacks have played out, the violence, the counter-violence, the Israeli airstrikes, have kind of, in a way, united the Muslim world that we see now, and Palestine, a subject that was on the back burner for a decade or so, no one was really talking about, that has actually come front and center, and the Muslim world is once again talking about Palestine in a way that it wasn't before. Do you think that these attacks have kind of achieved that objective, and that's something that we should be wary of?
I think that 2 billion Muslims in the world who have a religion which is not a religion of death and destruction, that 2 billion Muslims are horrified by the atrocities that Muslims did in the name of Islam. When a terror organization takes it to this type of extremity, I think that I've heard many, many Muslim voices who understand how harsh these atrocities are. The whole aspect is that part of the Hamas plan, and this has been done from the beginning, from October 7th, is that they not only lied about it, they put out not just a totally fake version, they are denying that they did any of the atrocities on October 7th. I have not heard the Muslim world or Muslim leaders standing up for Hamas terrorism. They're standing up for the Palestinian people. I will say clearly, as an Israeli, I have stood up more for the Palestinian people than Hamas have ever done so. That with this brutal attack, they broke people like me who so want to have a resolution, a peaceful resolution with fellow Palestinians. How do you do so when out of a population they grow such an aberration? So those voices that got together in Saudi Arabia on Saturday did not agree on anything. Right. There's the picture photo ops. They came together and said a lot of words. Yep. None of them are actions. They do not stand up, not for Hamas. Maybe Iran and the Islamic regime and Hezbollah stand up for Hamas, but they don't stand up for Hamas. Israel wants to protect not just the Gazan people's lives, Palestinian lives. We want to do so by actively destroying this horrific Hamas capability.
So that's an interesting point you're making, the fact that the attacks were so brutal that the Muslim world would like to dissociate themselves from those attacks, and there is a possibility at some point that there would be peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
I want to hope so. I always, in that sense, I'm going to take it on a very local level. We're right. A very small country, certainly compared to India. In Israel, we have a little under 10 million citizens, which is the state of Israel. And of our 10 million citizens, 20% of our full citizens are Arabic-speaking Muslims. And in this conflict, Sanjeev, in this time, those Arabic-speaking Muslims who are both inside the Israeli parliament, that are equal citizens inside Israel, they are the ones who have been clearly speaking out against the horrific acts that were done in the name of Islam. So of all places inside Israel right now, where 20% of our population are Muslim, these local Muslims, Arabic speaking, have been clearly saying this does not represent Islam. And again, I'm separating the brutal Hamas terror attack and the brutal Hamas terrorists that we need to stop. We don't want this to be an example for anywhere in the world, not for India, that would be horrible, or for anywhere. We want to make sure that this type of interpretation of Islam cannot exist. And as I said, there are those Muslim voices. I would like to hear them more. I absolutely support the Palestinians in their quest. And I absolutely, in that sense, say that for Israelis right now, we want to help and save the Gazan people's lives. To do so, let's go against that interpretation, that horrific interpretation of Islam as it came out in that brutal attack.
News9 Plus. Download now.